morning. In today's class, we'll be looking at controls and menus. Now, controls are UI elements that determine that how data, text, images, and other information appear on the user forms for both the display as well as for the user input. Now, each control type has a unique look and it provides certain function to the users, and the system assigns a default control when we define a new field. So, for example, when we are entering our information or signing up for an email, so how the platform opens for us to input the information, so that may vary. So, we will be taking a look at these examples, that how these can be provided to the user for ease of use, and also which help the user in navigating through the website or application. So, control is as per the user goal. So, there are broadly four types of controls, which are imperative controls, selection controls, entry controls, and display controls. So, the imperative controls are the ones that initiate action. So, here we can see the examples that sign up, verify now, return, next, download now, search now. So, the example are several here, and also when we are submitting a form, or so we click the form and it takes an action, which means it submits our application, for example. So these are the imperative controls where some kind of action is initiated and some it moves forward, whether it downloads a paper for us or whether it submits our application. So some kind of an action is taken. Now, selection control is one which allows the user to select options or data. So we can see a few examples here where we can see that there is a drop down menu which allows the user to select an option from the given options. So one can choose, maybe for example, if you're selecting our country, so we will scroll down through the different countries that are in front of us and we will select India or whichever country one is from. Then we also have the radio buttons. So they allow users to select one option from a set of mutually exclusive options. So we can see here option A, option B, C, or D. So we will be allowed to select only one action here. The next is the check boxes, so which may allow the user to select one or more options, and now each box can be checked or unchecked independently, so they are not dependent on the other. So for example, when we are selecting multiple interests or preferences, when we are signing up for a particular application, so we can select several of those at the same time. We don't have to select only music or cooking or reading, but if we have these three hobbies, we can tick on all three of them. Then how this information is presented is, so the drop down menus, we can see here how the menu rolls in front of us and it allows the user to select one option from that list. Then we have the list boxes. So here the display of options is presented and multiple options can be selected. And also we see the toggle switch here, wherein usually there is just two options, 1 and 2, so which is a binary selection, so whether it will be on or off. So here the choices are limited. And finally we have the picker, like we can see here, generally it is there for picking a date. So when somebody has to select their date of birth or their travel date, so in those cases we pick the month, year, and the date from this particular picker. Now entry controls are the ones which allow the user to input some information or input a data. And here we can see that we have different types of entry controls. So one is the text field. So generally when we are signing up for an email or for information on certain subject, so here we are to input this text. So this allows users to input single line text like name, email addresses, or even short answers, that why do you want to sign up, for example. And usually we see this while we are entering a username in a login form. So that is one example where we see this quite often. Then similar to this login bar, we also have the password input information panel. So here we have to input the security password, which is generally masked. So we can also sometimes have the option of unmasking and seeing whether we have input the right password that we wanted to input. And then we have the text areas, so which allow the users to input multi-line text for longer inputs. So for example, while adding some comments or messages, so if they have to write the feedback of a certain product they have purchased, so there they will have a limit of say 200 words to enter their feedback. So that is where this is used to give their input regarding a particular product, if they are happy or unhappy with its performance. The next is a number field, which is a specialized field because it only allows the user to enter the numbers, and numeric are only to be entered here. So it will show an error if one adds the alphabets. So when we are purchasing something online, for example, there is an option to select the number of those products. So when we are, for example, placing order for burgers, so we can always change the number. We can increase it to 2 or 3 also, or bring it down to 1 or 0. The next is the search field. This is also input field where the user will be putting up some keywords that they want to find on this particular website. So these keywords that are entered, they will lead to more information. The website will then present the information regarding those keywords that have been inputted by the user, and also the date and time pickers that we saw earlier also. And then we have spin boxes. So this allows the users to enter numerical value by typing or using the arrows to increase or decrease the numbers. Then we also have the file upload fields and the color picker. So here also the user is allowed to select a file and share it, and also to select the color, like we have, for example, Word, wherein we can change the text color as per our requirement. Like here we can see that the subheading is in dark green color, so that has been selected and the color of the text has been modified. So next is display controls, and this is where the user can visually manipulate the program. So few examples are labels. So labels are these static or dynamic text that provide information or describe other controls. And for example, we have a username or the temperature that we see, for example, 30 degrees centigrade, etc. Then we have progress bars, which show how much progress we have done. So certain questionnaires that require information to be filled by the user. So we can see there that there's a progress bar which shows that how far along are we, how much more time is remaining to fill up the remaining pages of the questionnaire. Also, when a software is uploading, there is a progress bar which tells us that 85% done, 90% done. So that is a progress bar which communicates visually that how far we have reached and how much more time is remaining. So next are tool tips. So these provide brief contextual information when users hover over or focus on an element. So the example is of when on a website we hover over a certain heading and then it opens up the subheadings which again folds back into it. So that is an example. Then icons that we have seen, which are the graphical representations that convey a specific meaning, such as some kind of action or application. So for example, a trash can or a trash bin icon tells us that if we move the files there, so they will be deleted, or a magnifying glass icon tells us that we can then increase the size of the font of the text that is there and we can read it better. The next is the image or video displays. So this shows static images or videos that users can view or interact with. Then we have charts and graphs, so how the user can modify the information and then see visually with the help of charts and graphs that information in front of us. So it tells us the trends, comparisons and patterns can be seen through these charts and graphs. And we also have maps. So these maps are interactive geographic displays which allow the users to view and interact with the location. So if I have to find a particular shop in the city, and if I Google the name of the shop, so the maps will show me where it is, and it will also show me the way to reach this particular shop as well. Then the other control that we have is that of sliders. So these sliders allow us to modify the level. So for example, in radio or in our music systems, we have this slider, so we can decrease the volume or increase the volume or brightness. And then we have the status indicators, which show us the current state of a system or control. And generally, with the help of colors or icons or animations, they tell us what is the status of it. So for example, if we have placed an order and there is some error, so it will, with the help of certain color and certain exclamation, it will show us that there was an error. Or if it is successful, then it will show us with a tick mark, a green tick mark, and maybe some other bright colored, message will come up, which will tell us that the transaction was successful. So in controls, there are also two types of validations. One is an active validation and the other is a passive validation. So the active validation is when the system immediately gives the feedback to the user. So for example, if the user is entering a phone number and only the digits are to be entered or numerical values are to be entered, so the system will give the feedback to the user that this only accepts numbers and the alphabets are not allowed. So this is an example of active validation, wherein the minute the wrong information is entered, so the system will just start showing the error. It will not allow the user to move further along. So although it is a good way to communicate to the user that what they are doing wrong, but sometimes it can be a little bit restrictive. Next is the passive validation. So now here, for example, if somebody is entering an email, so the system will allow the person to enter the entire email. And if, for example, at the end of the email, somebody has done some error, instead of Gmail, for example, they have added, say, P mail or some similar such mistake, then once they have finished entering, then only the system will communicate that there is an error, because it does not recognize the P mail that the user has mistakenly entered there. So now this system will only validate when we leave the field or after we have finished entering the data. It will not stop the user from entering the information. So the minute the user types in @p, it will not interfere, but only after the .com has been entered and the user goes to next tab, then only the system will inform the user. So in order to design better controls, some of the aspects that need to be kept in mind are that we have to remember one important purpose, which is to reduce the cognitive load on the user. So we don't have to overwhelm the user with too many controls so that they will just get lost and get confused, but we have to progressively introduce these to the user so that their work is not affected, their efficiency is not compromised. The next is the logical grouping. So similar controls, like for example form fields, buttons, options, so all of these different fields which are similar in nature should be grouped together so that user is able to identify and locate them easily. And save, edit, delete, so these can be also grouped together. The color provided to these buttons can stand out, so all of those things can be done in order for the user to be able to identify them quickly. And then next is to provide proper spacing. So we have seen that when the spacing is appropriate within the characters, within the words, and within the different lines of text as well, so it makes the whole process much faster and much easier. So for this navigation to be successful, we have to ensure that these gaps or spacing has to be appropriate. Frequently used controls should be easily accessible. So there are certain controls that the users use more often than not, and these particular controls then should be easily accessible because the user will reach out for these particular controls. Then highlight the important keys and actions. So to use design cues like larger buttons, distinct colors, and especially for the most important actions like submit or cancel or similar other functions that the user needs to quickly identify. So for them, this color contrast and other principles that we have discussed, they can be incorporated. The next point is complex workflows should be simplified. So now instead of showing all the possible options to the user, we can use, say, drop downs, we can use expandable sections, or we can use some other way in which the user is guided step by step and they are not just bombarded with all of these options where the user can get lost. Use of error messages appropriately. So one needs to keep in mind that the error messages or feedback has to be used in the right manner. So highlighting the incorrect field will help the user identify their mistake and fix it also. So we don't want to make the user feel bad about themselves. So that is important to note, that we don't want to make them feel like they are not intelligent. So because these mistakes can happen by very bright people as well, it again depends on how this information is presented to the user. Is it ambiguous, is it clear? So depending on that, the user may sometimes make a mistake. So we have to, in a positive way, how can we highlight the mistake so the user is able to correct it. And finally, less is more. So we have to be mindful that we do not clutter the interface with too many options or controls, and we have to present only the ones which are most important, and then the hierarchy of the most important controls and actions that the user will take, and then of course how to organize all the other actions so that they are able to be found when the user needs them. Now, Fitts law states that the amount of time required for a person to move a pointer. So now here we can take, for example, the mouse cursor, if you're using a desktop or a laptop, to a target area is a function of the distance to the target divided by the target size. So what the Fitts law means is that three things are important when we are designing the interfaces. One is the time, the second is distance, and the third is the size. So how much time will one take to move to the target? So if I have to, on my desktop screen, I have to go and check my cart, for example, or I have to add an item to my cart. From where I am browsing the particular item, where will I have to go? How far will I have to go to make that action, to navigate my mouse over to the area where then I will press click to add it to my cart. And distance from the target, that becomes important, and also the size of the target. If the target or the item, if the items are placed too close to each other, the information is too close to each other, one may make the mistake of selecting the wrong information also. So for example, if it is going back or selecting, if they are too close, then one can tick on go back rather than making the selection. So these three things become very important, which we have derived from the Fitts law. So now the key insights are: bigger is better. Again, this has to be designed in a way that the proportions are still maintained, but bigger is better in terms of the target or the particular item or the text, the information, the button, icon. So bigger, which is able to be seen by the viewer. So at the same time, how big it will be, for example, on this particular web page, that the designer has to determine. Next is closer is faster. Of course, if the button, for example, the button for add to cart is closer to where I am hovering over the item to see its various images, for example, if it is close to that panel of images, of course it will be much faster for me as a user to add that item to the cart rather than maybe scroll to the bottom of the page and then identify or find where is the button to add this item to my cart. Then next is icons plus labels. So icons need labels. So sometimes it becomes important that with the icons we do include the label as well, the information as well, and don't crowd the target controls. So if we place targets too close to each other, so sometimes there's a risk that accidentally the user will overshoot and trigger the wrong target. So this is especially going to happen if the target or the item is smaller. So which also leads us to the first point, which is bigger is better. So if the target is big enough, then crowding may work, but again, crowding should be avoided because an unwanted, but still crowding should be avoided because an unwanted error may take place. So coming to menus, so a menu displays a list of multiple actions on a temporary surface. It appears when the user interacts with a button, tab or other controls. We can see here that when we hover on the new, on the button new, so then this new menu opens, which has document, presentation and forms. So this also helps save the space because these three, which are document, presentation and forms, which are exclusively relevant for the button new, so they are not permanently out there on display, but they open up only when they are needed. Now the different types of menus are drop down menus. So these are the menus that appear vertically below a title or button when we click them, and we generally use them in web browsers or software applications. And for example, the file menu, when we have a desktop application, so when we click on the file, it shows us more options like open, save, print, etc. So these are one type of menus. The other are the cascading or the hierarchical menus, and these are the ones that expand into sub menus when the user hovers over or clicks on an option. So then they create multiple layers of options. So we can see here in this example also, like after hovering, how this catalogs is opening the different options, all catalogs or catalog 1, 2, 3 or 4. And now we use these to organize complex sets of options into more manageable hierarchical structures, because some of these may not be really relevant to be placed on a permanent panel on the screen. So these help because they are the subheadings. So then this is how the hierarchy can be maintained. And the next we have the contextual menus. So these are a type of pop-up menus that appear when the user interacts with a specific element and they offer related commands. So when we click, say for example, on a word, we click right click. So then it shows us more options like copy, cut, paste, or look for the definition, etc. So these are the contextual menus which are only active when we take a specific step like clicking right on a particular word or the control there. Then we have other types of menus which are the single select and the multi select. So the single select menus, they allow the users to pick one option from the list, like we can see here. So out of all the given options, one can only use or select one option. And the next are the multiple select menus. So here one can select multiple options from the given list. So we also have toolbar menus and the pie menus. So we can see here the toolbar menu, which we see in many applications, like even in the Word document we have this toolbar menu, which is a panel with all of those options that one can access. And sometimes there are icons and also sometimes there is a combination of text as well. So now this helps in organization of the frequently used commands that the user uses. And we have options like for text, bold, italics, and there also when we hover, so certain other options also open up for the user. And then the pie menus are the circular menus where options are arranged around a central point, and this helps because it reduces the distance between the pointer to the option that the user wants, because they're only arranged in a small circle, so the user only needs to move around in that circular manner. Wherein in the toolbar menu, the information or the tools are spread across the width of the particular application. Now we can see that how the Fitts law is applicable or should be looked into when we are designing the menu. So now we can see here the three types of organization. One is linear, rectangular, and the pie menu. So the average distance from the menu handle to a menu element depends on the type of menu. So linear menus, which is on the far left, they are less efficient than the rectangular menu, and rectangular menus are less efficient than the pie menus. So in the linear menu, we can see that items farthest from the handle take longer to reach. So one has to like really scroll down in order to see all the options. So generally, if there are certain options that the users use more frequently, so they should be arranged on the top so that the user can access them quickly. The rectangular menus, they are arranged horizontally, and so they are a little bit more efficient as compared to the linear menu. And pie menu, so all are equidistant from the handle, and they result in the equal time to reach each option, so which reduces the time taken, but still this is not a very preferred method in the area of UI. So here we can see that the options are the same, so we have 1 to 7 option, but when we just slightly change the location of the menu label, so from top it has come onto next to the option 4, so it makes the distance for the user to travel from the handle to the option much more convenient and more accessible. So now if on the right, in the example on the right side, the options are almost equidistant, so the time one will take to reach option 1 will be same as one will take to reach option 7, as compared to the example on the left where the time taken by the user to reach number 7 would be much more as compared to reaching number 1. So this is one way in which the Fitts law can be utilized to see that how can we minimize the distance and increase the efficiency. So here are a few more examples. So now in the mobile contextual menu, so menu options should appear close to the label to avoid wasted movement time. And we can see on the left, in the example on the left side, that where those three dots are, now how once we click on them, the information is really far away from where we clicked on the more option icon. So placing the related targets closer makes it a more efficient system. Now, another example here, we can see that one person has filled in the information which says first name, last name, phone, address, all of those information. After entering it, the save button is now on the top right panel. So generally when we are going through a page, when a user is following the information and they're filling it from top to bottom, then it makes sense that the save button is at the end of the last field that the user is entering, rather than placing it on the top where the user have some difficulty in identifying the save button. And also finally, in the last example here, we can see that after entering from where we are traveling to where we want to go, how the options are very close to each other. So it makes it very easy for the user to understand, because if these two were further apart or there was some other information between these two, then it would sort of make the user feel disconnected. So how the related targets are close to each other, so this minimizes the movement time, but also at the same time they should not be so close also that there is some accidental clicking on the wrong button. So today we saw that how controls and menus are integral, and how the different principles of design that we have studied in the past also, including the color and typography and iconography, how they all come together to create these menus and controls which are very useful in making the whole navigation very smooth and efficient by the user. So with this, we'll end today's lecture here, and I will see you in the next class. Thank you.